She was the world's definition of perfection. Audrey Hepburn glided across cinema screens with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, her elegance so refined that it made audiences believe true love and lasting happiness were not just possible but inevitable. Women wanted to be her. Men wanted to protect her. The entire world watched this delicate creature with the enormous eyes and whispered that she had discovered the secret to living beautifully. But what the world didn't know, what remained hidden behind that radiant smile and those perfectly poised moments, was the devastating truth about her heart. Audrey Hepburn had experienced a love so profound, so all-consuming, that when it ended, it left a wound that never fully healed. For decades, she kept this secret locked away, mentioning it only in the quietest moments to those closest to her. Not until the very end of her life, when she reflected on everything love had cost her, did Audrey finally reveal the identity of the one man who had broken her heart in ways that no other person ever could. This wasn't one of her husbands. It wasn't one of the famous men whose names appeared in gossip columns alongside hers. It was someone far more complicated, far more tragic, and far more real than any of the stories the world had invented about her romantic life. His name was William Holden, and their love story contains all the elements of the greatest tragedies ever told: perfect timing that arrived too late, impossible choices, and a connection so genuine that decades later, people who knew them both would still speak about it in hushed, reverent tones. To understand why William Holden broke Audrey Hepburn's heart, you must first understand the person she was before they ever met. You must know about the little girl who learned early that the world was not safe, that people left without warning, and that happiness was something you had to search for desperately because no one was going to hand it to you. You must understand the pattern of her life, the way her childhood shaped every romantic decision she would make, and why she was so vulnerable to a man like William Holden when she finally encountered him. The truth is far more heartbreaking than any film script could ever capture, because it reveals something painful about human nature itself. Sometimes, two people can be meant for each other in every way except the one way that matters most. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is walk away from the love of their life because they love themselves enough to demand the future they've always dreamed of. What happened between Audrey Hepburn and William Holden is not a simple story of romance and betrayal. It's a story about sacrifice, about choices that seem unbearable, and about a woman who had to choose between the man she loved and the children she'd always dreamed of becoming a mother to. It's about how sometimes, the person who breaks your heart is not the villain in the story. Sometimes, that person is simply the wrong person at the wrong time, and accepting that truth is one of the hardest lessons love ever teaches us. Before William Holden ever entered Audrey Hepburn's life, she had already learned the most painful lessons that love could teach. Her story did not begin in the glittering world of Hollywood premieres and red carpets. It began in a small bedroom in Brussels, Belgium, on May 4, 1929, when a baby girl was born into a world that would soon teach her that security was an illusion and that the people you loved most could disappear without explanation. Audrey's father was Joseph Victor Anthony Rustin, a man of aristocratic bearing and considerable charm. Her mother was Baroness Ella van Heemstra, descended from Dutch nobility, a woman of refinement and poise who seemed to have everything society demanded of her. From the outside, the Rustin family appeared to have stepped out of a storybook. They traveled between Belgium, England, and the Netherlands, living in beautiful homes, speaking multiple languages, and existing in that rarefied world where money was never discussed because there was always enough of it. Young Audrey grew up surrounded by culture, education, and the kind of sophistication that money alone could never buy. But beneath the polished surfaces of their elegant homes, something was quietly breaking. Her parents' marriage was deteriorating in ways that even a young child could sense, though she could not yet understand. There were tense conversations behind closed doors. There were long silences at dinner tables. There was the unspoken anger that fills a house when two people have stopped loving each other but continue pretending, for the sake of appearance and propriety, that everything is perfectly fine. Then, in 1935, everything shattered. Her father left. He simply walked away from his wife, his daughter, and the life they had built together, and he never came back. Audrey was only 6 years old. At an age when children still believe their parents are invincible, that adults have all the answers, and that home is the safest place in the world, Audrey learned something entirely different. She learned that people leave. She learned that love does not guarantee loyalty. She learned that the person you depend on most can vanish from your life without warning, and there is nothing you can do to stop them. The psychological impact of this abandonment cannot be overstated. Friends who knew Audrey throughout her entire life would later describe how this single event shaped every relationship she ever attempted. She carried an almost desperate need to be needed, a fear of abandonment so profound that it made her cling to relationships even when they were clearly damaging her. She developed an almost compulsive desire to create the stable family she had lost, to build something so strong and so loving that it could never fall apart the way her childhood home had fallen apart. This wound, this 6-year-old's understanding that love was not enough to keep a family together, would become the invisible thread connecting every major decision Audrey would make about her heart. When she finally met William Holden years later, when she was no longer a frightened child but a woman standing at the height of her beauty and fame, this old wound would make her especially vulnerable to a man who seemed to offer exactly what she had been searching for her entire life: permanence, devotion, and the promise that this time, unlike with her father, someone would choose to stay. By 1953, Audrey Hepburn had transformed from a struggling young actress into one of Hollywood's most luminous stars. Her performance in Roman Holiday had earned her an Academy Award and overnight international fame. She was 24 years old, beautiful in a way that seemed almost unreal, and suddenly, every studio in Hollywood wanted to work with her. Directors saw in her a rare combination of elegance and vulnerability, a quality that made audiences feel protective of her even as they admired her strength. She seemed to embody everything that was graceful about femininity without being fragile or helpless. Men were drawn to her. Women wanted to be her friend. And yet, despite all of this external validation, despite the success that most people dream about their entire lives, Audrey remained emotionally searching. She had achieved the career success that was supposed to fill the empty spaces in her heart, but it hadn't. The applause, the awards, the recognition, none of it could heal the fundamental wound that her father's abandonment had created. She still wanted what she had wanted as a little girl: a home, a family, a man who would promise to stay and actually mean it. This was the emotional landscape of her heart when she arrived on the set of Sabrina to film opposite two of Hollywood's most established leading men, Humphrey Bogart and William Holden. William Holden was born in 1918, making him 14 years older than Audrey. He had already established himself as a serious actor, appearing in prestigious films like Sunset Boulevard and Stalag 17. He carried himself with the kind of confidence that comes from years of success in a competitive industry. He was handsome in a distinctly masculine way, with an easy charm and a warmth that made people around him feel comfortable. More importantly, he seemed grounded in a way that many actors are not. He was a man who appeared to have his life together, who knew what he wanted, and who pursued it with intention. For Audrey, who had spent her entire life feeling unmoored by emotional unpredictability, William Holden represented something almost magnetic: stability. The connection between them developed slowly at first, then with increasing intensity. They found themselves seeking excuses to spend time together away from the busy film set. What began as professional courtesy evolved into something far more personal. They would have quiet dinners together. They would take walks through the city. They would have conversations that went late into the night, the kind of conversations where two people reveal their true selves to each other, where pretense falls away and only honesty remains. Audrey felt seen by William in a way she had never felt seen before. He didn't treat her like an icon or a beautiful object to be admired from a distance. He treated her like a real woman with hopes and fears and dreams. He listened to her talk about her childhood, about the loss of her father, about her deepest desire to become a mother and build a family. And William, for his part, seemed genuinely moved by her vulnerability. He had been through his own struggles. He had his own disappointments and regrets. But when he looked at Audrey, something in him seemed to awaken. He appeared to want to be the man who could give her everything she had been denied. The feelings they developed for each other were not the shallow attractions of two beautiful people. They were deep, genuine, and complicated. This was real love, the kind that makes people want to build a life together, the kind that makes the future seem not just possible but inevitable. Neither of them could have imagined at this moment that their love story would become one of Hollywood's greatest tragedies, that within a short time they would face an impossible choice that would force them to sacrifice the future they were beginning to envision together. As their relationship deepened and became increasingly serious, William Holden and Audrey Hepburn began to discuss the future they might build together. These conversations happened in private moments, away from the scrutiny of studio executives and gossip columnists who were already beginning to speculate about their connection. Audrey spoke openly about her dreams. She wanted marriage, real marriage, not the kind of arrangement that many Hollywood couples entered into for publicity or convenience. She wanted children, multiple children ideally, a house full of love and noise and the messy reality of family life. She had spent her entire childhood longing for the stable home that had been ripped away from her, and now she was determined to create that for herself. She wanted to step back from acting, or at least reduce her workload significantly, to be present for her children in the way her own mother had not been able to be present for her. She wanted to be a mother first and an actress second. This was not negotiable for her. It was the dream that had sustained her through years of struggle, the vision that made all the sacrifices of her career feel worthwhile. William listened to these dreams, and he seemed to embrace them. He appeared to want the same things. He spoke about building a life with her, about creating a family, about a future that looked nothing like the glamorous but hollow existence that Hollywood often demanded of its stars. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed as though Audrey had finally found the person who could give her everything she had been searching for. Then came the conversation that changed everything. William Holden had to tell her something he had been avoiding telling her because he knew it would hurt her, because he understood that once she knew the truth, it would fundamentally alter the trajectory of their relationship. Years before he met Audrey, William had undergone a vasectomy. He had made this decision based on circumstances in his own life, for reasons that made sense to him at that time. But he had never expected to fall in love with a woman who wanted children more than she wanted anything else in the world. He had never anticipated meeting someone like Audrey, someone who embodied everything he had come to value, someone whose desire for motherhood was not a casual preference but a core part of her identity. When he finally told her, the words must have felt like a physical blow. For Audrey, this was not simply disappointing news about a medical procedure. This was the closing of a door she had believed would always remain open. This was the end of the dream she had carried since childhood. All of her sacrifices, all of her hard work, all of her emotional vulnerability in this relationship, it had been leading toward a future that was now impossible. She could not have William Holden's biological children. She could not create the family she had always dreamed of with the man she loved. She was forced to confront an impossible choice: she could stay with the man she loved and abandon her lifelong dream of motherhood, or she could leave him and search for someone else who could give her the future she had always envisioned. This was not a choice between two good options. This was a choice between two forms of heartbreak. Staying with William meant sacrificing the children who had existed in her imagination her entire life, the children who represented her healing, her redemption, her chance to create the family that her own childhood had lacked. Leaving William meant walking away from genuine love, from a connection that was real and profound and possibly irreplaceable. Audrey made the decision that would define not just her romantic life but her entire understanding of herself as a woman. She chose her dream. She chose motherhood. She chose to believe that somewhere in the world there was another man who could love her as completely as William did, but who could also give her the children she desperately wanted. She ended the relationship. The breakup was devastating for both of them, but it was William who appeared to be shattered in ways that Audrey was not. Friends who knew him during this period described a man who was broken, who could not seem to recover from losing the woman he loved. He had experienced rejection before, but nothing like this. This was not a woman who had stopped loving him. This was a woman who loved him so much that she was willing to walk away from him to honor a dream that predated their relationship. What followed William Holden's breakup with Audrey Hepburn was a slow, visible deterioration. Those closest to him watched as he threw himself into a reckless lifestyle, as if he were trying to outrun the pain of losing her. He drank heavily, far more than he had before. He pursued numerous affairs and casual relationships, each one seemingly an attempt to prove to himself that he could move on, that Audrey was not irreplaceable, that life could continue without her. But the people who truly knew him understood that none of it was working. The drinking became more severe. The relationships became more hollow. William Holden was a man trying to fill an empty space with everything except the one thing that might have actually helped: acceptance and time. Audrey, meanwhile, made her own attempt to move forward. Not long after her breakup with William, she met Mel Ferrer, an accomplished actor and director who seemed to offer her a different kind of future. Mel was intelligent and established in the industry, and he appeared to want the same things she wanted. Most importantly, he could give her children. Audrey married Mel with genuine hope, with the belief that she had made the right choice in leaving William, that this was the man who would help her build the family she had dreamed of. But the path to motherhood proved far more complicated than she had anticipated. Audrey endured multiple miscarriages, each one a heartbreak, each one a reminder that even when you make the right choice, life does not always cooperate with your plans. She suffered a stillbirth that devastated her emotionally and physically. The dream of becoming a mother, which had felt so close when she was with William, began to feel impossibly distant again. Years passed before she finally gave birth to her son Sean in 1960, a moment of profound joy after years of profound sorrow. She had gotten her child, but at what cost? Her marriage to Mel was deteriorating, plagued by rumors of infidelity and emotional distance. And the man she had loved so completely, the man she had chosen to leave because she wanted children, was spiraling further and further into darkness. Then came an unexpected reunion that would reopen wounds both of them thought had healed. Nearly a decade after Sabrina, Audrey and William found themselves cast together again in a film called Paris When It Sizzles. Seeing each other again after all these years was emotionally overwhelming for both of them. William's condition had worsened significantly. His drinking had become severe enough that it was affecting his ability to work. There were days when filming had to slow down because he was not in condition to perform. His health had deteriorated visibly. The charming, confident man that Audrey had fallen in love with had been worn down by years of unhappiness and substance abuse. Yet despite everything, his feelings for her had never disappeared. One evening during filming, William, overwhelmed with emotion and perhaps with alcohol, did something that revealed just how much he still loved her. He climbed a tree outside her dressing room, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. It was a gesture that was both romantic and desperately sad, the action of a man who could not accept that the woman he loved was no longer available to him. When Audrey learned what he had done, she must have felt the full weight of the choice she had made years earlier. She had walked away to pursue motherhood, but in doing so, she had also walked away from a man who loved her with an intensity that most people never experience in their entire lives. She had not saved him. She had not been able to give him what he needed. And now, seeing him struggling, seeing the damage that their separation had caused, she had to accept that sometimes there are no good choices, only different kinds of loss. The filming of Paris When It Sizzles was difficult and emotional for both of them. They moved through their scenes together professionally, but the undercurrent of unspoken longing was evident to everyone on set. When filming ended, they parted ways again, knowing that this was likely the last time they would see each other.